And Anthony Summers is on the line with us. Anthony Summers is the biographer, investigative journalist, documentary filmmaker, author of numerous books. His latest, The 11th Day, the full story of 9/11 and Osama bin Laden, with his co-author Robbyn Swan, and his website, Anthony Summers, SUMMERS.com. Anthony, welcome to the program.
Hello there.
Great to have you with us. You have written just some absolutely brilliant and groundbreaking books. Your biography of J. Edgar Hoover, Marilyn Monroe, the first book on the Kennedy assassination, and so on. I find it fascinating that you've decided to go on, after Osama bin Laden and the 11th day, the full story of 9/11. In this piece in was it Vanity Fair? There
was a major extract in Vanity Fair a couple of weeks ago. Yeah,
the extract. You write that just 2 weeks before the 9/11 hijackers slammed into the Pentagon and the World Trade Center, members of a Saudi family abruptly vacated their luxury home near Sarasota.
That is last week's story, and that was in fact in the Miami Herald. This is very recent reporting by me.
Okay, so I'm curious, in a broader sense, what you think is the largest story here that most Americans don't know, and that you'd like to share with us. But is this that? Is this piece of that, or what's going on here?
I think the larger story is indeed that most Americans, I think, believe that the hijackers acted on their own under the tutelage of Osama bin Laden and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, better known these days as KSM, because Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is so much of a mouthful, and that it all came out of the mountains of Afghanistan and was really the brainchild of merely crazed religious zealots. I think that's the general impression that I get, that most Americans think.
Right.
It seems that it wasn't as simple as that. That there was support, hard to know quite the extent, but support to some degree by other powers. There was some support from Iran. Not surprisingly, Iran leans in general in direction of terrorism against the United States. But it may be that in the case of Iran, it extended only to letting hijackers, the future hijackers, the terrorists, travel across Iranian borders without having their passports stamped. Very important, because if you have an Iranian stamp in your passport, you're far more likely to be really toughly turned over by U.S. immigration. Yeah.
Now, does this mean that the Iranian authorities knew that they were planning on doing what we call 9/11, or just that they were?
There are those who allege that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that.
Okay.
But far more significant to me is the role of Saudi Arabia, the United States' supposed ally since the Second World War. An ally, yes, in terms of business and oil, but at a level, there are two levels of apparent Saudi assistance. One is that for years before 9/11, named Saudi princes paid what, if we were talking about the mafia at this lunchtime, we would call protection money. Paid money on the basis of don't attack us and we'll look after you. And the dues went to Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. But in the field, it was discovered by Congress's joint inquiry that when the first two future hijackers arrived in the United States without any English, complete aliens to Western culture, they were helped by known Saudis, one of them a guy who'd been thought for years to be a Saudi intelligence agent. This was essentially withheld from the congressional inquiry by the FBI, and the inquiry investigators stumbled on it on their own. What I have done in the last couple of weeks is to develop a very similar story in Florida, where the three of the four pilot hijackers learned to fly at Venice, just south of Sarasota. There, in a gated community at Sarasota, lived a Saudi couple. The house was owned by the father of the young woman in the couple. they left on August the 30th, just about 2 weeks before 9/11, and they left the house best described by the counterterrorism agent and another significant witness whom I interviewed. They left the house as if they'd just gone to the movies. They left dirty diapers in the bathroom, 3 cars in the driveway, one of them a brand new car registered only the previous week. It was as though they'd gone to the movies, gone out grocery shopping. And this was reported to the authorities after 9/11. And after lengthy research, it was found that the 3 locally trained future pilot hijackers, that's Atta, Ziad Jarrah, and Marwan al-Shehi, had come and gone from that house in the 5 months before 9/11.
This is how they were training at the flight school in Florida?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And what has happened to the family that had rented that house or owned that house?
Well, the people who'd been living in it, a man called Al-Hiji and his wife Anud, left on August the 30th. They left and flew back to Saudi Arabia via Arlington, Virginia. But the owners of the house were a couple called Ghazawi, Issam Ghazawi, and his American-born wife, Deborah Ghazawi. Mm-hmm. They are also back in Saudi Arabia. The daughter, while living in the house, told neighbors, rather arrogantly, they remember, that we're very important, in Saudi Arabia. We have connections with the Saudi royal family. Mm. There is an Issam Ghazawi, not necessarily, but I think quite likely, not necessarily the same man, who at one point was known to have been a financier for one of the senior Saudi princes.
So are you suggesting that there's an association between the Saudi government and 9/11?
One must be very careful here, not jump to conclusions. That's the nature of the work that I do. But it is clear from all the work we've done writing the 11th Day over the last 5 years, it is clear that there was a split in the Saudi family, in the Saudi royal family, which is a very large royal family. But at a high level in the Saudi family, there were those who didn't want to, as it were, rock the oil boat. And there were those who wanted to use their millions to pursue the Wahhabi zealous religious position, which is very firmly, as is the whole country, against Israel and for the recovery of Jerusalem. And as I said earlier in this conversation this morning, some members of the royal family paid millions in official money to Al-Qaeda and to Osama bin Laden in the way of protection money. Don't try to hit the regime in Saudi Arabia, and we will look after you with funds.
Right. I'd like to get into this, the 11th Day. Anthony, is it possible you could stay with us until the bottom of the hour? For the next 15 minutes?
For 10 of those minutes would be fine.
For 10 of those? Okay.
Yes, as long as I can go away at past, yes.
Okay, at past, yeah, absolutely. It'll be 27 past.
Okay.
Hold on just a sec. We just have to take a break here for our commercial stations. We'll be right back. We're talking with Anthony Summers, anthonysummers.com, his website.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
He is the author of the new book, The 11th Day, the full story of 9/11 and Osama bin Laden, along with Robbyn Swan. We'll be right back with more from Anthony Summers. Anthony, you still here with us? Anthony Summers?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Our commercial stations have gone to break, but our non-commercial Pacifica stations are still with us, and we're still on Free Speech TV, on DirecTV, and Dish Network in 55 million homes nationwide. So I'd like to continue the conversation for the 4 minutes of this commercial break, and then when we come back, we'll have another 4 minutes or 5 minutes of combined, and then we'll wrap up at 27 and a half minutes past the hour, just for your calendar, your schedule, because I've asked you to stay over, and I know you've got other things planned, if that works with you. isn't this, you said that the Saudis have been paying protection money to these folks. Didn't this really start with the very first Saudi king and the founder of Wahhabism back in the 30s?
Well, the first Saudi king goes back much further than the 1930s. It goes back a century or two.
Okay. But the first modern deal that was made after the end of World War I, wasn't it? Or, I mean, please, you inform me. I don't.
The deal with whom?
With the Mr. Wahhab, or the founder
of
of
the Wahhabis. They are a religious sect, and they allied themselves with the Sauds. Remember, Saudi Arabia, I believe, is the only country in the world that's actually named after a person, after the first King Saud.
Right.
This goes back. No, it goes back before World War I into the 19th century, and it was an alliance formed because the Sauds allied themselves with the Wahhabis, who were a fierce religious sect, who had primacy in warfare amongst the tribes, and that gave the Sauds the ability to seize power. It was a vital and, as things have turned out over the years, a fateful alliance, because it meant that the regime in Saudi Arabia was literally married to a sect which was entirely committed to the most extreme form of Islam.
Yeah, we've had guests on this program who have described, Wahhabism as maybe the Christian equivalent would be Seventh-day, or not even Seventh-day Adventists, the Watchtower people. What are they called? On steroids. The people who knock on your door constantly, and that they are using Saudi Arabia as kind of this launching pad for this.
Well, it's always. I think it's launched. I mean, it floats. It is
into other
Saudi
countries,
Arabia, and it is powerful, and it has never been possible to loosen. To loosen what binds the royal family to Wahhabism. They've tried at various stages to contain it and to behave more moderately. But whenever this has happened, there's been a resurgence, and then they've had to do a deal and compromise with the Wahhabi influence. I mean, the clerics in Saudi Arabia, like clerics or anyone in any organization anywhere, have their extremists and they have their moderates and they have their not so moderates. But in the end, the extremists tend to have won out.
It's the Wahhabists, yeah. Okay, we're talking with Anthony Summers, the biographer, investigative journalist, documentary filmmaker. His newest book, The 11th Day, The Full Story of 9/11 and Osama bin Laden. We'll be back in 20 seconds. Stick around. 19 minutes past the hour. Thom Hartmann here with you. The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Solar World. SolarWorld.com for information on solar electricity.
Have you forgotten when those towers fell? We had neighbors still inside.
Taking back the mainstream media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. Thom Hartmann here with you. Anthony Summers on the line with us, the biographer, investigative journalist, documentary filmmaker, author of numerous books. His most recent, The 11th Day, The Full Story of 9/11 and Osama bin Laden. AnthonySummers.com, his website, Summers spelled like the season. Anthony, what is the 11th? Why the 11th Day is the title?
Well, September the 11th was the day of 9/11. It was easy. It's very unusual. I've, as you know, and as you've kindly said, I've done. This will be my 8th book. And titles, in my experience, are things that get debated all the way to the last moment.
Yeah.
And tossed backwards and forwards and shouted down by colleagues and then decided on. Because you've got to have one at the last minute. And this one I came up with the first afternoon we started working on the idea of writing a book about 9/11. It has a sort of ring to it. It was the 11th day. It gives it an almost, it's the wrong word, but biblical with a small, very small b,
sure,
sort of feeling. And it stayed. We've called it the 11th day, but I think more important than the title is to say what we attempted to do. I was in the United States on 9/11. I was in California working on a completely different project. And I got myself to New York as fast as I could, which was, I think, about 2.5 days later. I think the back end of Thursday I made it. And went down to 9/11 and used my press part and my lies to get very close to what was going on. And knew then that I wanted to write about this. It had the feel immediately of a world event that I needed to know about. Right. And then time passed, and the other project consumed my time. And then 5 years later, I decided with my co-author and wife, Robbyn Swan, that we would try to do the story. And things had very much changed by then, because conspiracy fever, the truthers, as they call themselves, or people call them, were in full swing, and all sorts of, frankly, loopy theories were going around. Some that seemed, at least on their face, less loopy, suggesting that explosives had somehow been involved in the bringing down of the Twin Towers of the Trade Center, and a loopy one that we got rid of, got shot off fairly quickly, which was the idea that planes did not actually hit the Pentagon, that it had been a missile and so on. Right. But most important, I found that across the world, not just in the United States, millions of people had somehow got lost in the fog of all these theories. And I wanted to shake the theories, see if they held water at all, and then find out as near as possible what happened, what the truth was about 9/11. And the tragedy, I think, is that for many people, is that millions of people have, even if they don't believe the truly silly conspiracy theories, have the feeling that something's been hidden from them about 9/11. And the conspiracy theories have contributed to obscuring what really matters and the real questions.
Right, and some of these, and in the just 2 minutes we have left here, or 3 at the most. For example, today is the anniversary of the rounding up of the family of Osama bin Laden in the United States and shipping them out of the United States. Correct me if I'm wrong. There is a story that George Bush Sr. was having breakfast with a member of the Saudi family when 9/11 happened. That George Bush Jr.
I think one must be very careful about that. Of course, there is a business link. There was a business link way back between George W.'s father and the Saudis, and indeed between the former President Bush and himself and Saudi in connection with the oil business.
Right, he was bailed out by one of them.
Yes, but the suggestion that the Saudis were allowed to leave the country before the airways were open again does not fly. I checked it very, very carefully, and in fact, by the time they were allowed to leave the country, the planes were flying again, and charter aircraft, which is what the Saudis used to get out of the country, were allowed to fly. What is far more important, and was forgotten in the rush to tell that faulty story, is that many of those who left, including, in particular, the members of the bin Laden family who were allowed to leave, were not properly questioned by the FBI. And that is serious.
Mm-hmm. And why?
They were just given a free pass to go. I'm not privy to why.
This is something that came down out of the State Department, the White House?
I don't think it was like that. It's certainly clear, however, that they were not ordered to make sure that all the questions were asked. Remember, it was very early days. You can yourself remember the confusion and the chaos of those days.
Sure.
I think a lot of history should not be paused too much. One can try, and if one finds sinister things in the background, then there are sinister things there. But my impression is that there was a call from the Saudi ambassador, that word came down from the White House that they should not be detained here once the airways were opened, and that then, with the FBI having an enormous amount of myriad other things to do in terms of the investigation, and it was the biggest investigation, I think, of all time in the FBI, topping even the investigation that followed the JF Kennedy assassination. And I think maybe you could put it down to inefficiency. I've certainly seen no suggestion that anyone deliberately said, don't question members of the bin Laden family.
Very interesting. Or incompetence or whatever.
Yeah.
Anthony Summers, his new book, The 11th Day, The Full Story of 9/11 and Osama bin Laden, with its co-author Robbyn Swan. AnthonySummers.com, and, of course, in bookstores, Twitter, Robbyn, ROBBYN, SWAN. Anthony, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Great speaking with you.